Welcome to Enforce Justice, dedicated to the enforcement and protection of crime victims' rights. Enforce Justice was created to pursue legislative change by starting the discussion between constituents and members of the General Assembly on issues affecting our communities. The only measure of justice residents have to protect their children, loved ones, or themselves is the law. Justice is the law. Know the laws and how they can work against us. Get involved and take action to enforce justice on behalf of the people. Hosted by Denise Rothheimer.
Welcome to Enforce Justice. Today we're going to discuss child sexual abuse and the impact it has on our communities. In the state of Illinois, of the 24,000 registered sex offenders, 19,000 are child sex offenders. It's important that our community understands that the epidemic of violence facing our children is growing at an astronomical rate. And here to join us and discuss this issue is Erin Merryn. She is author as well as activist. Erin, thank you for being a part of today's show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, can you explain to our viewers, help us understand the impact child sex abuse has on a victim?
It has a huge impact, and so often as a child you're told no one will believe you, this is our little secret, and because our society is so hush-hush about it, children keep it hushed away, locked away, and don't tell anyone. The same way I have, so many other children have done the same exact thing.
So you were a victim of child sexual abuse?
Yes, at age 7 and also from 11 to 13.
When you were 7, was the offender different than the offender in the case when you were 11 to 13?
Yes. Just weeks before my 7th birthday, I was raped by my childhood friend's uncle that lived with her. Been a house I'd gone over to numerous times to play, but a man I knew.
Right.
And so often put into our heads as a little kid is stranger danger. That's what parents are warned about. Your kid's going to be snatched from the bus stop. Don't take candy from the stranger. Don't go look for the lost puppy. But so often it's someone a child loves and trusts.
And this perpetrator were you able to tell your parents after that act of violence what happened?
No, I did not. I kept silent about it, but I was acting out. There were all the warning signs that parents often see, but there were other things going on in our family that's kind of differed the situation to look in a different direction. And then we ended up moving. So I was moved away from this perpetrator, began a new life, and suddenly I was 8 years old and acting like a completely normal kid and kind of repressed it.
Did you at any time after the crime feel that you could manage the trauma that you were facing as a result of the rape? Did you feel like you could, if you didn't say anything or seek help, that you were able to just manage it on your own?
For me, it was more, there was nightmares, there were flashbacks, but for me it was more just trying to forget about it. Didn't want to think it happened. And of course at that age, at such a young age, you don't know the concept of what sex is, of sexual abuse, because we weren't being educated about it in schools. You know, we were warned about, I was taught all throughout my childhood, Illinois mandates by law, schools have to teach kids tornado drills, fire drills, bus drills. They do the DARE program. Say no to drugs. 8 ways to say no. I remember those 8 ways, and I never turned to drugs, alcohol, you name it. But the message of how to tell today and how to get away never came. So I didn't know how to talk about it.
And I understand you're trying now to work with legislators to pass a law in your name, Erin's Law, to mandate that schools do start educating children on sexual abuse?
Yes, it's my mission to go out there because I feel this is such a huge epidemic. There are so many of these predators out there. And you hear people saying we don't have the manpower to, track every single one of them, especially the ones that are supposed to be registered and aren't.
Right.
And so my mission is, with Erin's Law, we require all these other laws, like I said, the tornado, fire drills, we mandate it to educate kids on this. Why not educate them, give them the knowledge and protection on safe touch, on safe secrets, on how to get away, on how to, speak up about this.
Right.
Because we fail to educate kids on this. And I hope parents listening will understand that it's 93% of the time, it's someone you love and trust that does this to your kid. It's not stranger danger. I know that's the message you tell your kids. You know, you're worried about them at the bus stop. You're worried about them when don't talk to strangers. That's the message we send kids. But parents don't understand that majority of the time it's someone you love and trust.
Right.
If it's not a family member, it's someone else out in the community, whether it's a coach, whether it's a family friend, whether it's a youth leader, you name it. It's someone you usually know.
Right, and we see time and time again that child molesters, they're master manipulators of children. And one of the tactics that they use to lure their victims is through trust. And the issue I have with the parent responsibility is that when you have two different types of reactions from parents. There are those who will believe their child and take action. And then there are those who will deny what the child is saying out of fear that their child may have caused the perpetrator to participate in those activities, thinking that the child is sexual, because we have a lot of media that portrays young children in a sexual manner. And so you have a lot of circumstances that children at such a young age have to deal with and face when something is happening to them. Who can they go to? Who can they tell? And when they tell, are they being supported? Is our justice system in favor of protecting children from violent offenders? In Jasmine's law, what I've proposed is to raise the minimum sentencing for the rape of our children, because as difficult as it is for a child to go through to stir up the courage to tell, it took my daughter a year before she disclosed to me, and she was also threatened. And when we pursued prosecution, it was just cut down to a plea deal and minimal sentencing. So we really need to let our society know that child sex offenders, they're deviant, they're malicious, they're destructive, they are out there to conquer and slaughter a child's innocence. Raising awareness in schools, raising awareness in communities is all critical, because we have to arm our children with information. But at the same time, we need to arm our system with the reality that we as citizens, as residents in the state of Illinois, do not accept 6-year, 4-year, 3-year, 2-year, 1-year minimum sentencing for people who sexually violate our children. I understand you've also written a book that details your account of the abuse as it was happening.
Yes, after we moved from ages 11 to 13, here I got away from one perpetrator. Little did I know I was moving that much closer to the next. This time it was a family member. An older teenage cousin had been sexually abusing me from age 11 to 13, and at 13 I found out he was doing it to my younger sister. She came to me. This cousin threatened me, told me no one will believe me, you'll destroy our tight-knit family, and this is our little secret. And so I kept it locked away in a diary, detailing events of what was going on at Christmas, Thanksgiving, family holidays, family get-togethers, or while I watched his little siblings. And when I broke my silence at 13, I was ashamed. I was afraid to speak out about this. I felt no one understood. So I stuffed all that pain inside and went the route of self-injury, attempted suicide at 16, was dealing with the nightmares, the flashbacks, you name it. It was just, my past was haunting me daily. And I decided to conquer this fear and this shame I had by confronting my cousin. And by confronting him, I found my voice again and was able to turn my childhood diary into my first book, Stolen Innocence. And I decided by writing this, it was my goal to go out there and put a face and voice on something so many people are ashamed to talk about.
Right.
The hush-hush topic, to realize you're not alone, that this is happening, and you don't have to be ashamed. You can use your voice, and if the first person doesn't believe you, the first person doesn't show you support, somebody will. Keep talking.
Right, and you talked about some of the consequences that victims do face. Re-victimization happens to be one of them. Chances of a victim who's raped, of becoming raped later in life, are more than double that of someone who's not been a victim. So it's important that people understand the consequences victims face. It goes way after the actual incident. It's not just the time that you're being violated. You really do live with what happens to you throughout the rest of your life.
Correct. It will follow you the rest of your life.
And people need to understand that we need to prevent victims by holding perpetrators accountable, which means they need to be in prison.
Exactly.
In the first case that you mentioned, there was no charges brought against the offender, so there was obviously no prosecution. In the second case, were there any charges brought against that offender?
No, with my cousin, we went the route, because he was a teenager, we went the route of trying to get him the mandated psychological help that he needed. And we were warned that if we were put on a witness stand, we would be ripped apart, my sister and I. Why didn't you tell the first time? Why did you allow this to go on for nearly 2 years? My parents feared putting their children on a witness stand for secondary abuse, they looked at it as.
Who gave you this warning?
Oh, the police. Police warned us that, prosecutors will, defense attorneys will end up coming back at us and literally ripping us apart in the stand, and my parents felt it was going to be more emotional damage towards us. So we found out that he was going to go the route of 7 years probation, sex offender treatment program, get all this counseling, hopefully to prevent him from doing this again, rather than maybe what our light sentencing is, a year or two in a juvenile facility.
Right.
Unfortunately, his mother fought with the state's attorney and got all charges dropped.
Right. And that's the problem that we are facing, is the victim blaming. We really must educate our society on the realities of child sexual abuse. The victim is never at fault. There is no blaming on victims. Justice must be served. Erin, I want to thank you for being a part of today's show, to share information on your books and what happened to you, to help our viewers understand we must protect children.
In our nation, over 60 million people are sexually abused as children. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys are victims of sexual abuse before their 18th birthday. And children with disabilities are 10 times more likely to become victims than their non-disabled peers. Mothers on a Mission to Stop Violence is dedicated to justice and the protection of children. Moms V has initiated and is pursuing Jasmine's Law, an important measure to protect our children from sexual predators. The mission of Moms V is to raise awareness and provide a resource for victims and survivors to share their testimonies and reach a nationwide audience to take political action in an effort to protect and enforce state laws and our constitutional right to a fair legal system. As people, we have an enduring responsibility to care for each other and do what is right. Please stand up and join us. Visit www.momsv.org and check the calendar